I'm Dr. Nicole Lipkin, and this is the Hey Kiddo podcast where we talk about all things parenting. Today, we are talking with Vanessa Kroll Bennett about puberty. Vanessa is a rock star and the USA Today bestselling author and podcaster who helps adults raise tweens and teens with joy. She's a co-author of the best-selling book, This Is So Awkward, Modern Puberty Explained, and the co-host of the This Is So Awkward podcast, and president of content at Less Awkward. She's a frequent contributor to Scary Mommy, and Vanessa was the founder of Dynamo Girl, a company focused on building kids' self-esteem through sports and puberty education. Vanessa, I am so excited to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming to speak with us today.
Thrilled to be here.
I have so many questions for you. And puberty was so awkward. So first and foremost, how did this journey into helping parents navigate puberty begin for you? Like, what made you want to take literally the most uncomfortable phase of life and make it less weird?
So the funny thing is, I grew up in a house where we talked about everything. So this stuff was not so awkward for me as it was for other people. My younger brother and I used to have sleepovers. He would have a friend and I would have a friend, and we would actually spend the night reading those books, Where Did I Come From and What's Happening to Me, if you remember those.
Yep.
And there was nothing off limits in our house. And so I was always super comfortable talking about basically everything. And then as I got older and I was an athlete and I realized that I found being part of a team and being in sports like another kind of empowering aspect of my life, when I had a daughter and I was trying to figure out how to give her that same sense of empowerment, I started a company called Dynamo Girl, and we used fundamental sports skills and social emotional learning to build girls' self-esteem. And really quickly, I noticed two things. One, that the girls in my classes were in puberty much earlier than I expected them to be. So we coach thousands of girls across New York. And I was like, wait a second, but these are second and third graders in puberty. I wasn't expecting this. So a little bit of research made it super clear that that was a national phenomenon, that girls are entering puberty on average 2 to 3 years earlier, between 8 and 9. 9 is the magic number because 9 is also the age at which girls' self-esteem is, the data shows, is plummeting through the tween and teen years, and as of now, never to recover. So I thought, well, that can't be. Like, I got to be a girl who was filled with self-confidence thanks to my family's education and sports and community and teams. And I want that for my daughter. So I didn't just start doing sports classes with Dynamo Girl. We also started running puberty workshops because I find that the not knowing, the lack of information is what makes people feel scared, awkward, worried, all of that. So I thought, well, if I can give kids and their parents more information, I can really help them become more empowered. So as I was running puberty workshops, I got connected to an amazing pediatrician in LA, Karen Anderson, who wrote the Care and Keeping of You cult puberty books. And we decided to do a podcast. And then after the podcast, we decided to write a book together. And after the book, we decided that schools needed a health and sex ed curriculum that was modern and updated. So we built that. And then we were like, wait, but parents need lots of stuff too. So we took everything we had ever done and poured it into a parent hub on our website, Less Awkward, because we make everything less awkward.
It's awesome. I love that. I love that. So it's so interesting. I didn't realize kids were nationally getting their period. Is this globally or nationally?
So it's global. And
Yeah.
I should say my work initially was with girls. So I was aware of the quote girl problem. But it's kids of all genders. So boys on average also start 2 to 3 years earlier. They're between 9 and 10 on average for the onset of puberty. And it's not just in the US, it's around the
It's everywhere.
world. There was some really interesting research out of Italy during COVID about puberty starting even earlier,
Wow.
but they think that was a blip. And the first sign of puberty in girls is actually breast buds. And
Yep.
for those of us who had breast buds, those suckers poke out of everything. Like they're sore and sensitive, and there's no hiding them. The first sign of physical puberty for boys is actually really, really, really slow penile and testicular growth. Like from
Mm.
day to day, you wouldn't even notice it, but that's private. And
Right.
it's under the
Right.
underwear and under the shorts or the pants. And it happens so slowly that people don't notice it. So their world was kind of more aware
Huh.
in a way of girls because there was no hiding it. Whereas with boys, people
You
didn't
didn't
notice
see
it.
it.
And that happens for a couple of years for boys before there are other physical signs of puberty.
Do we know why it's happening earlier?
So there's a lot of theories, and there's not one reason, but multiple reasons. So one of the reasons are the endocrine disrupting chemicals in the items we put on and in our bodies.
Huh.
So, like cosmetics, for example, there has been theories for a long time that cosmetics that have these endocrine disrupting chemicals are causing earlier puberty. But just this year, there was research that came out about musk ambret, which is a synthetic fragrance used in cosmetics, and
Yeah.
it mimics musk, right? The sort of naturally occurring musk. It's a cheaper way to add fragrance to cosmetics, and researchers were able to see that the musk ambret was attaching itself to the hypothalamus. So the puberty starts in the brain, it starts in the hypothalamus,
Yeah.
and the hypothalamus releases GnRH. The GnRH goes to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland releases LH and FSH. This is in people of all genders. LH and FSH travels down to the gonads, so either the ovaries or the testicles, and that's when either in the testicles, testosterone starts getting produced in those organs, or in the ovaries, estrogen and progesterone start getting produced. Here's the thing. Musk ambret is causing the hypothalamus to release GnRH. It's basically jump starting the process of puberty.
Wow.
It's attaching itself and jump starting the process of puberty so that the whole domino effect is begun. And the theory is that there are other endocrine disrupting chemicals that are having the same impact. So that's one. Two, chronic stress. I mean, as a mental health provider,
Yeah.
the impacts of chronic stress are myriad, but one of the impacts are elevated levels of cortisol for, an extended period of time. Cortisol can be converted into sex hormones and can tip kids into puberty earlier. On the evolutionary perspective, if you are living under chronic stress and you are like, I'm in trouble, I'm going to die, I'm going to
Yeah.
die, I need to be able to reproduce before I die. My body needs to become
Wow.
sexually mature in order to be able to reproduce. So in some research, it's saying that kids are being tipped into puberty as an evolutionary response to chronic stress. So that is,
Whoa.
yes, plus, you know, climate change, school shootings, academic stress, like all of the
Right. Well,
stressors
these
coming at kids.
existential stressors. Because
Correct.
the entire field of psychology is changing, having to learn how to help with those kind of stressors that we didn't have to learn before. So,
Correct.
so wait a second, back up. So it's Musk Ambert.
Musk ambret, AmbrettE.
So Musk Ambret is a scent
It's a
that is in
chemical.
a
Yes.
chemical
And
that's in cosmetics.
here's the thing about fragrance in cosmetics, that those are considered, fragrance is considered a proprietary secret, a trade secret. And so companies are not required to disclose what is in their fragrance what their fragrance is made up of. So there can be these things in fragrance in your body cream or your shampoo or your makeup or whatever, and you have no way of knowing what's in it. So that's part of the reason we recommend everybody, but particularly kids, use unscented fragrance-free products, because then at least you know
Wow.
it's not in there. And muscat bread is one of 1,000 endocrine disrupting chemicals. It's not the only one. There are many, many, many of these chemicals, and we often don't know if they're in the products that we're using.
So immediately, everyone should just fragrance free, period.
Yeah, I mean, it's better for kids' skin. It's better
Yes,
for, not just so that they don't go into puberty earlier, but there's all sorts of reasons why fragrance-free is better. It's less irritating, particularly on body parts like genitals, right? We don't
sure.
want any strong fragrances or strong ingredients. We really want gentle, gentle cleansers to use to wash the body. And then also, as you think about like deodorants or face washes, I mean, the challenge is you've got this trend, the sort of Sephora tween trend, which is
Yes.
super controversial and stressful. And one of the challenges is what is in these products. So it's not just like 9-year-olds using retinol, which obviously they shouldn't be using. It's not safe for their skin. But on top of it, the ingredients could be affecting their health in other ways.
Okay, so that's one bucket. Let's talk about the stress bucket before
Yeah.
we move on, because I just want to break that down. So obviously, this is, I mean, not only impacting puberty, but impacting our ability to learn, impacting our ability to focus, all of it.
Yeah.
Very interesting that you said there's some evolutionary theory behind this, that we're protecting the human race.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty wild. So there's robust research that girls who live in homes with men who are not their biological father, so like a guy, a stepfather, a boyfriend. Sometimes this is, and a lot of this research is cited in Louise Greenspan's book, The New Puberty. Louise is a pediatric endocrinologist out of Kaiser Permanente in Northern California, and she has done a ton of groundbreaking work around this. And some of the work she cites is about girls living in households where there are other men in those households,
Yeah.
that can tip them into puberty also as an evolutionary response. Oh, there is a male to whom I am not related. This is an opportunity to
Huh.
reproduce. But then you think about girls living closer to violence, girls living in households with food insecurity, housing insecurity. By the way, it's not just girls. The data about girls and men living in their homes, that's girl specific. But the other research is about kids in general living under chronic stress. Cortisol is a cousin of testosterone, and so there is can be conversion. There's also what's called peripheral fat conversion. So
Hmm.
estrogen, these hormones are produced all over the body in different places, and in fat, estrogen is produced in our peripheral fat. And so people would probably have heard about like obesity in kids or overweight kids causing earlier puberty in girls. So the estrogen can in the peripheral fat, and the more fat you have, the more estrogen you have, that can also tip girls into puberty earlier. Boys who carry extra weight will also have more estrogen
Hmm.
than boys who don't. And boys who carry extra weight are actually, their puberty can be delayed because the relative amounts of estrogen and
Right.
testosterone in the body are closer, and therefore their puberty can be delayed. I want to be super clear. All bodies have all of these hormones.
Yeah.
All bodies have testosterone, estrogen, LH, FSH, GnRH, right? It's the relative amounts that sort of dictate what puberty a person is going to go into.
Wow.
So the weight issue, the sort of what people call the obesity epidemic. I don't love that term. It's a
I don't
medical
either.
term, is on the one hand tipping girls into puberty earlier, but on the other hand can be delaying boys' puberty.
Boys.
Mhm.
Interesting. So with all of it, I mean, there's so much to unpack
There's
here, but
so
with all
much to unpack.
so much, but with all of this, what are parents getting wrong? Like what are they getting wrong?
So I think first of all, as kids are entering puberty earlier, parents are seeing kids who look to them to be older than they actually are,
Hmm.
right? Like an 11-year-old these days can look like what a parent thought a 14 or 15-year-old
Right,
looked like when we were growing up. And it's understandable to be confused or to respond to that kid based on how they look. And it's really important that parents and trusted adults treat kids the age they are, not the age they appear to be, because you can tell us better than anyone else that kids' development is not based on their stage of puberty. Their development is based on their brain maturation and their
right.
developmental age and stage. And they need to be cared for according to that developmental age and stage, not based on like the size of their breasts or how tall they are.
Yep.
And it can be hard to retrain your brain to look at a kid and remember, oh, this kid is actually 9, not 12. Like I have to have
Right.
the expectations of a 9-year-old. I have to speak to them like a 9-year-old. I have to support them like a 9-year-old. So I think that's something that is hard for parents and trusted adults, but so, so, so critical. Treat kids the age they are, not the age they appear to be.
It's great advice. That's great advice. I think that's, it's interesting. I was a kid who developed at 11, and in our generation,
That was
that was
early in our
early.
generation. Right.
That was early. And my parents did a great job treating me as an 11-year-old, but the
Yeah.
rest of the world did not.
Correct.
I had the body I had the body I have now.
Yeah.
I had everything.
Yes.
And it was really confusing for me
Yes.
and really hard to get that kind of attention from older people. So how do you navigate the early developers and the late developers as parents?
So, what you'll see kind of in every clickbaity news report is that girls who enter puberty earlier are at a higher risk for mental health challenges like depression and anxiety, for earlier sexual experimentation, and for substance abuse.
Hmm.
It's not that puberty causes them to have those mental health challenges or to engage in those behaviors. It's that the world sees them as older, treats them as older, and exposes them to experiences that they're not ready for. And
Yeah.
therefore, they are, sexual experimentation, substance use, and all of that. I mean, again, this is your field, those experiences
Yeah.
can impact profoundly a kid's mental health. So, with
Ooh,
early bloomers, it's super, super important, as I mentioned, to treat them the age they are, not the age they look, which means they may still want to play with dolls, or they may still want to play with
yeah.
Legos, or, they might have a mood swing and scream and cry at you, and then they may want to curl into your lap and give you a cuddle. And parents have trouble holding both of those
Hmm.
things, and it's our job as the adults to be like, this is still my kid, they still need my love. I have to help them push back on the world. So if you have an
Yep.
early blooming kid, girl, let's say, and she's walking down the street, she may get comments from
Yep.
people who think she's 16, not
Yep.
realizing she's 12. That is frightening. That
That's
is
very frightening.
confusing, right? Like you may have experienced that, Nicole. So part of it is having an open conversation with a kid and saying, hey, have you noticed that sometimes people think you're older than you are,
Yes. It's
right?
talking. It's
It's
opening up the lines of
talking, it's
communication.
opening up, and then saying, yeah, it's so weird. Like people talk to me, and I'm like, who are you? Why are you talking to me? And then a parent can say, what are some things you can do or say to keep yourself safe, but also kind of push back on that? And so we've had girls say, like, honestly, I just ignore it. That's like safer for me than anyone else. I've had them say if they're somewhere where it's people they know, right? It's like a family gathering or at a
Mm-hmm.
school event, you can help kids find the language to say stuff like, I know I look older, but I'm actually only 12, right? When the well meaning adult who's trying to connect is like, oh, do you have a boyfriend? Or,
Right.
the
Right.
those kinds of comments, or the comments like, oh, you're so grown up. People feel this permission to
Yep.
comment on kids' bodies. So that's another piece of advice I would give for parents of early bloomers or late bloomers. We have a policy of no body talk in my family, which is like, we're not commenting on our kids' bodies. We're not commenting on other kids' bodies. Like, find other ways to connect to and communicate with kids. So, if you're going to a family occasion and you've got those aunts and uncles who feel total permission to comment on the size of your kids, you know, everything from the size of their
Anything.
breasts to the size of their feet to the height to the
Yep.
acne to the weight, whatever. I actually recommend ahead of a family gathering just saying, like, hey, you know what? So and so's really into music these days. You should ask them about what kind of what albums they're listening to right now. I know you love music and they love music. It'd be a great thing to talk about. Or, oh, you should tell Uncle so and so the movie we just saw. I think like he'd love to hear. Giving adults other ways to connect with kids, because we grew up in a world where everybody talked about everybody else's body and how they
All the
looked
time.
all the time.
All the time.
The generation ahead of us grew up with people making all those comments.
Yeah.
So sometimes people just need a roadmap of how to connect to kids. Now, let's talk about late bloomers.
Yep.
So the earliest of the early bloomers are girls. The latest of the late bloomers are boys, because girls' onset of puberty on average is about a year earlier than boys. So they're like the caboose. Being a late blooming boy is really,
It's
really,
really
really
tough.
tough.
Yep.
It's tough because if you are an athlete, it can push you out of engaging or successfully competing in
Yep.
sports because people are so much bigger than you are. If you're really social, if you're interested in sort of romantic stuff and crushes, it can kind of count you out of that because people don't see you as a sort of object of interest. And people, adults, treat you younger because you look younger.
You
So
look
just as we
younger.
don't want to treat kids older than they actually are, we also don't want to treat kids younger than they are. That 11-year-old who looks 8 and somebody treats them like they're a baby, that's super devastating too, because as you would tell everyone here,
Yep.
Nicole, their developmental age and stage, their brain maturation is
Yep.
that of an 11-year-old with all that wonderful complex capacities there. So we want to make sure our late bloomers don't feel counted out, that they don't lose opportunities to compete, to be physically active, to engage in
Yep.
sort of all this exciting social things, and that we don't let the world treat them like they're babies, because that is really humiliating and really devastating to a kid that age.
But also as a parent, as a caregiver, how do you talk to your boy about that? Because that
So I think
is
you have
it's
to name
tough.
it. You really have to name it. I mean, listen, I come from a family of late blooming men, except my dad. So my brothers were both super late bloomers
Hmm.
and it was really hard. And my dad did not get it because my dad was an early bloomer. But we talked really openly about how hard it is. My husband was a late bloomer. We actually have two really good episodes on our podcast. One is with my brother, Nick Kroll, who actually created the show Big Mouth, all
Yeah.
about being a late blooming boy. And his best friend was an early blooming boy. So, anyone listening who has either a late bloomer or an early bloomer, check out Big
Watch
Mouth.
it.
It's so good. And we did an episode with him about being a late bloomer, and it's beautiful. It's really and then my husband, Roger Bennett, who has made a career out of, being a huge personality, he was also a late bloomer, and he attributes his success to having to develop all different sides of himself because his body was not growing and he needed to like be big and alive and present in other ways. So those are two really good episodes. I think they're episode like 2 and 4 of the Puberty
Okay.
podcast before we changed the name to This Is So Awkward. But talking about it, acknowledging it, just something like, hey, I know it's so hard. I know it's hard. Your friends are bigger and stronger. Tell me how that's going for you. And they may say, like, ugh, I don't want to talk about it, or just like, ugh, it sucks. And then you just say, I'm always here. I'm always here to talk
Hmm.
about it. There's not really anything we can do. Now, in terms of late bloomers, you can go to the pediatrician. They can order bone age tests, which is really just an x-ray to look at how open the growth plates are in the bones, because we
Yep.
grow at the ends of our bones. If there's any concerns, you can then see an endocrinologist. There are kids who are even later than they should be, and you can go see medical providers sometimes, if nothing else, just for the doctor to reassure you that everything's fine. And remember that really, really slow penile and testicular growth, a pediatrician can say, actually, you have started puberty. It may not be like totally visible to you, but I can tell. They have a really cool
Right.
necklace called an orchidometer,
Huh.
and it measures testicle size by volume. And it's
Huh.
basically like a little necklace of like different size balls, essentially. And they
Yeah.
and they don't whip it out like at just an ordinary pediatrician's appointment.
Right.
But pediatric endocrinologists will have those, and they will actually can
That's
measure,
great.
because testicles are like breasts, right? They come in all
Yeah.
different sizes, and there's not one end point and not one starting point. So go see a healthcare provider, but also just
Yep.
validate for your kid that it's hard and you get it and you're there from them, but also it's not something you can like fix with a wave of a wand.
Yeah. No, this is great. It is. It's so even the reason why I like your title, the less awkward title, it's awkward for parents. It's
It
awkward
is.
for us. And I think with that, we all have our puberty experiences. So
I
I
call
think
it our
it's
puberty baggage.
our
We all bring
puberty
our
baggage.
baggage to the door. That's right.
Right. And so helpful or not helpful to bring our puberty baggage to the conversation?
Maybe this will answer your question, Nicole. At the beginning of every puberty workshop I ever ran, at the beginning of every keynote I ever give, I help adults leave their puberty baggage at the door. So it is totally understandable that we can remember exactly that moment in sixth grade when our
Hmm.
hearts were broken, or we woke up with like a new lump, bump, or smell, right? Like we have no idea what we ate for lunch yesterday. I don't even know
But
what
we
year
remember
it
that.
is, but we remember that, right? Like, I mean, you will say trauma seals, but even more, those memories are formed as our brains are developing. They're going from bumpy dirt roads to super highways,
Hmm.
and those memories get sealed into those highways.
Yeah.
And that's like dictated who we are and who we've come to love and the friendships we've built and maybe even the work we've chosen to do, right? It's had like amazing impacts on us.
Yeah.
Great. But our kids are going through their own journeys, and those journeys are long and tiring and arduous, and they're carrying their baggage on their shoulders right now. And if we give them our baggage to carry also,
Yeah.
the journey becomes even harder. So the question I always get from parents. So in workshops that I do, I have parents write down that memory, that seminal puberty
Yeah.
memory, and then we put them on post-it notes, and then we put the post-it notes outside the room. Like it is like
Yep.
it can't be any clearer.
Yeah.
Um when I'm in a keynote, inevitably I get the hand that's like, but what stories can I tell? What can I share? And so what I like to tell people is like the stories that are funny, the stories that show you as fallible and resilient, like tell those stories. But
Yep.
if your story is about how your heart got broken in 8th grade, and even still now you cry yourself to sleep while your partner is asleep on the pillow next to you, like don't tell your kid that story. They don't need that baggage.
Yeah.
Go find your own trusted adult. Go to a friend, go to a therapist, Go to someone who's an adult to whom you can pour out that story, but
Yeah.
your kid doesn't need to be the receptacle of that story.
Absolutely. I want to put my psychologist hat on for a second. Like, couldn't agree with that more. I just think in all of our conversations, whether it be adults or kids, when someone's struggling,
Yeah.
it is like kind of second nature to say, yeah, I've been there. I totally get
I
it.
know just how
We
you
want
feel.
to.
Right.
I went through da da da. We want to because we think having someone being relatable will help someone. But
Yeah.
what it ends up doing is it shuts the conversation down and it puts it on the other person to now feel for
Caretake.
you, feel for
Yes.
you. And it's unintentional. It's always like good intentions, but
Yes.
shuts a conversation down and makes someone else start to caretake you. Absolutely.
Totally.
Absolutely. It's hard though. It's hard though because you
It's
want to
hard.
share.
And you know what? We've all done it. So if you do it, if you have done it, you can circle back. I mean, this is another one of my sort
Hmm.
of major puberty tenets is when you
Yep.
mess up, because you will mess up, you go back and you say, you know what, yesterday you came home and you
Yeah.
wanted to talk to me about something. And I just went and told you a story about my own puberty years, my own teen years, my own friendship challenges. I am so sorry.
Yeah.
That was not what you needed in that moment. Can I get a do over? Like, let's try that again. And they might say, like, ugh, no. Like the moment's passed.
You
It's too
forgot
late.
the eye roll.
Fine. I know. The full body roll.
Oh.
And fine. Like, okay. But what you modeled for them is what it looks like to own your stuff, to
Yeah.
take a do-over, to apologize if necessary, and also to say, can I have another chance? Because they're also going to be on the other side of things. They're going to mess up. They're going to make the mistakes. They're going
Yes.
to need to take a do-over. And you've modeled for them what that looks like, which is honestly one of the most valuable skills you can develop as a human being.
In life with every conversation.
Correct.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, you talk about like the big puberty talk versus the ongoing talks. And like how do you, especially if your child doesn't want to talk to you and you kind of said like you kind of said it when you were describing boys puberty having later like I don't want to talk about okay, I'm
Right.
here. But how do you show that ongoing support especially if your child's resistant?
Yeah, I mean, we get that question a lot from the parents who are like, I try, I'm doing my best. They just don't want to talk. And some of that's personality type and temperament. Some of that is for boys, testosterone, we know shows up as rage and aggression, but it
Yeah.
also can show up as silence. And so we sort of assume they don't want to be near us. They don't want to hear from us. They don't want to talk to us. A few things on that. One, we sometimes hope or expect it to be like a kumbaya moment. We expect it to be like, we're going to talk for 4 hours and we're going to just bare our souls and you're going to share with me and I'm going to share with you. Right. And the truth is, a lot of these conversations are like 30 seconds in and out, 2 minutes in and out, and they're not always going to be a dialogue. Sometimes it's a one-way street, and we're just giving kids a little bit of information that they know, that we know they need. So, for
Yeah.
example, um, a kid comes home and you realized, oh, they're having like drug education in middle school and you want to know what they learned, but they're like a lockbox, right? They're not
Yes.
responding, they're not opening up. So in that case, and you may have tried like, hey, what did the drug counselors talk about when they came into school today? Like, I'm super interested. I don't know. I don't remember. Fine. So then you say, well, it's interesting. I've been reading about this drug called fentanyl, and it's really, really dangerous, and it's in all sorts of other drugs. And I wanted you to know about it because it's really frightening to me. And it's in like counterfeit pills that kids can buy over Snapchat. And I just want you to know if anyone ever gives you anything or you see something online, you should come talk to me. I won't freak out, but I want to be helpful. That's it. Right?
Yep.
I wasn't able to get him to say anything to me, but I gave him a few pieces of really important information. Sometimes I'll say to kids like, I need 5 minutes. I'm going to set the timer. We're going to sit. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to say anything. You don't even have to look at me. I just have to give you some information, right? That was actually how the porn conversation I started with my youngest when he was
Yep.
10. That was it. 5 minutes in and out. He came back to me a week later with questions. So, not expecting, it's not about us, not expecting it to be like meaningful or satisfying for us, knowing that what we're doing is actually just giving kids, imparting
Yep.
information bit by bit over time, hundreds of little conversations. And you just finish every conversation with like, if you ever have any questions, I'm always here. Or like, let me know if anything was confusing, circle back, I'm available, right? Just leaving the door open
Yep.
over and
Yep.
over again.
I love that. I love that. I think you nailed it because I think we think in our heads these big grand, again, like you said, kumbaya conversations. It's not.
Right.
It's these little like teeny interactions that we just have all the time too
Totally.
that
And
make all the difference.
it's not about us. It's not about fulfilling our emotional needs.
Right.
This is
Right.
really about us providing them with information. Now, what is the
Yep.
added benefit? What is hopefully the side result? That we have increasingly open lines of communication and connection with our kid. Yes, like that is ultimately the goal by
Yes.
opening the door over and over and over again. But it doesn't happen, in that
Like that
one conversation
at
here. It,
all.
it you might not see the results of it for 3, 4, 5 years
Sure.
down the road when you've had many of these conversations. And what it tells a kid is when they're exposed to something, when they see something, when they notice something, because you've initiated the conversation with them, you're saying, hey, I'm a safe place to come back and ask me questions. I have opened the door to this conversation, which means you can always come to me. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to freak out. I can handle
Yes.
this topic.
And with that, what are the signs? Like, what are the signs that you're seeing progress in the open communication around the
Mm.
awkward stuff?
So, one of the things, and if people are going to laugh, but my kids mimic me back to me. So it's everything from, one of the siblings does badly on a test, and someone else, another sibling, is sitting at the table saying, they put on my voice and they put on my way
That,
of being. And they're like, well, what are some strategies you could have used? What would you do differently next time? And I'm like, okay, well, you're making fun of me, but you being able to repeat that to your sibling tells me you actually heard what I said.
yes.
Or, um, you know, one of my kids was like going to a party and oh no, they were going to a concert and we were on the phone. And as I'm opening my mouth to say, no pills, no powder, make sure you have planned your way home, he was like, I know, no
No
pills, no
pills.
powder, plan a way home, plan a backup way home, have a buddy. And I'm like, great. So it can feel like they're making fun of you, but it's also a sign that they've heard you. Not only have they heard you, but they've taken it on board enough that they can then repeat it back to you. Yes, in a mocking voice. Yes, imitating you, but you know that they can hear you and
Yes.
they've ingested it.
Yeah. I also want to add another thing that you were saying when your kid comes back and asks you questions.
Right. So asking questions, I think that's very dependent on personality and temperament. So the kid, and I'll tell you this story about the porn because it's really, really interesting. So he's my fourth kid, 3 older siblings. Like this kid gets exposed to everything earlier. And I realized, oh, he's 10. So Common Sense Media's study tells us that 15% of 10-year-olds have been exposed to porn. So I was like,
Yep.
okay, time to have the conversation. He's online, he's on YouTube, he plays
Yep.
video games, whatever. So I was like, hey, have you ever heard the word porn or pornography? And he was like, oh yeah, my friends talk about Pornhub. I've heard of Pornhub. So I'm like, Okay. So now we know
Mm-hmm.
that there are 10-year-olds on Pornhub. Awesome. But
Yeah.
it like the internal monologue is like, stay calm, breathe, it's okay. And so then I just gave him a few pieces of information. Okay, so porn, it's, people doing sexual acts either by themselves or with someone else. It's video or photographs. It's not for kids. If you ever seen it or see it or exposed to it, you can always come let me know. Like, I'm not going to freak out.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really important that it's not for kids. And a week later, he came back to me and he was really into anime. He reads a lot of
Yeah.
manga.
Yeah.
And he said, we were walking the dog. So, walking the dog, riding in the car, all of those frontal
Mm-hmm.
eye
Mm-hmm.
contact activities. We're walking the dog. And he was like, Mom, I think my anime has porn in it.
Hmm.
And I was like, huh, that's interesting. What made you say that? By the way, if you ever get a comment or a question from a kid and you're not sure how to respond, this is Cara, my partner, says it. And she says it in like her perfect radio voice. It's like, that's so interesting. What made you say that? So you can say to your kid, oh, that's so interesting. What made, in this case, I actually literally just wanted to know what made him say it. And he said, well, the women characters in my anime are always getting their clothes blown off in battle and they end up
Mm.
naked. And he said, and sometimes the male characters are reading magazines, and in the magazines, the women are naked. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh, shoot. Like, this kid has bookshelf after bookshelf after bookshelf of
Sure.
anime books. And I said, wow. And, we talked about it a little more. And I said, what do you think we should do with that anime? And he was like, I think maybe I should find some different anime because I don't really like how the women are treated in it. And that was it. So
Wow.
it wasn't, it was
Yeah.
about porn, but it was like he took the
He
conversation we
problem
have
solved it.
and applied it to his
Yep.
lived experience and his reality. Now, he's a reporter, he's a chatter, he's an inquisitive
Yep.
kid.
Yep.
That is not going to happen with, I don't want people to think like, oh, that's going to happen with my kid. I have other kids in my house where that would never have happened, and
Right.
other kids I've worked with where that would never happen. But don't imagine for a second, just because they're not talking or they're not asking questions or they're not reporting what's happening in school, don't imagine they're not taking on board what they're telling you. Often the quietest ones are the ones who are listening, who are processing, who are really thinking through it. And we have to give them credit for just like sitting in these thoughts and not assuming that because they're not chattering or asking that they're not actually processing what they're
Right.
hearing.
I have one last question for you.
Yep.
Social media sucks. It just sucks so bad.
Was that a question or a statement? It felt like a statement.
It's let me start with the statement and go into the question. And just distorts everything.
Yep.
So, so where do you go with that and puberty and the conversations and all of that stuff?
Right. I mean, so I'm sure many people have read Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious
Hmm.
Generation, along with lots of other work. And yeah, tech and social media is really complicated for kids. Social media in particular just exacerbates the sort of comparison Olympics that tweens and
Yeah.
teens are naturally going to go through, anyways, comparing bodies and athleticism and academic achievement and, all of those things. It only amplifies that inclination to compare oneself to others and to wonder, am I normal? Am I not normal? Do I measure up? It's also a way to escape life when life is hard and stressful. So, video games, social media, time spent online, kids tell us that it's nice for them to have a little bit of time, downtime after like incredibly busy, stressful times. So, this is a situation where I think for kids of age, it's in moderation and like having conversations with kids about what is their use like? What are they looking at when they're on? Are they looking at cooking videos because they're checking out recipes they want to make this weekend? Or are they looking at bodybuilders who are pushing them supplements and steroids, right? So
Right.
not all social media content is created equal. And I think it's important to parse what it's being used for, what role it plays in a kid's life. But also for everyone, they should not be on it all the time. There should be limits. And it's like sleep training, it never ends. Social
Hmm.
media oversight with kids is a constant process. My 15-year-old just took TikTok off his phone recently because he was just like, I feel like I'm on it all the time. And like, I can't help myself. I also make my kid hand in his phone at the receptionist at school every morning and pick it up every afternoon because he can't have a phone in his pocket without responding to it. Um, there's a lot of research about girls and mental health and
Yep.
social media.
A lot.
So there's great uses of social media for girls to connect with people around the country. I mean, my daughter has friends all over the country from camp and programs, and she gets to like catch up on their life and be connected to them. That's great. The social media that makes her look at her body and think it's not good enough or pretty enough or whatever, obviously that's bad social media. So I think we have to get more granular and more sophisticated in our analysis, but that involves understanding what our kids are watching and seeing on social media. So we really recommend like, hey, what's on your For You page? Like, what's showing up for you? I'll show you mine. Mine is all like sloths and dachshunds, like over and over again. So understanding what your kid is looking at, I think delaying access to it.
Yep.
So like if they're of age to be on an app, start with one app, see how it goes, be in conversation with them about it. And then if, I have 3 of my 4 children snuck Snapchat before they were allowed to have Snapchat because it was so important to their social making plans and social
Yeah.
connections. Sometimes we don't get why something is so important to kids. Being in conversation with them about
Yep.
that is really important. Like, it's so easy to be judgy. It's so easy to be
Yep.
extreme in our
Yep.
reactions. Like, we have to be the adult in the room and
Yep.
be measured. I will also say, like, the 5th grade group chat is one of the most toxic places on earth. So
Yeah, it
that's
is.
great if your kid doesn't have a phone. That's great if they're not on social media, but if they have access to a device and they're on a group chat with 25 other 10 or 11-year-olds, there are some crazy stuff that happens there. So
There's mean stuff.
mean
Mean.
stuff,
Mm-hmm.
images,
Yep.
language, treatment of other people. So like, yes, pat yourself on the back, but don't be too self-congratulatory because there's all sorts of stuff that can happen at much simpler platforms. And so we also have to be in conversation with our kids about sort of the ordinary interactions of kids this age.
Yeah, one of the last podcasts I did with Stephanie Humphrey was fantastic, and she's an expert around teaching kids about technology. But like one of her main takeaways is we have a huge responsibility as adults to know new stuff, know what's out there,
Yes.
know what's happening, educate ourselves, be ahead of the game, like and get it.
We have to keep ourselves educated, and I get it
Yes,
because listen, we have so much to do. We have
so
so much
much.
to do. And it's so hard to keep abreast of things on top of everything else we're doing. But I promise, like, this is one where it's really worth it.
It's worth it.
And the world is telling us and scaring us that, like, we can't do it and we're doing it wrong and we're failing. I'm telling you, you are not failing your kids. You are not like, if you are here, if you are listening, if you are thinking about this stuff, you are doing great. Have confidence
Absolutely.
because a terrified parent is a paralyzed parent, is a parent who feels ineffective and disempowered. And if we feel that way, we translate that to our kids. So we
Our
have to
kids.
be calm and confident. Even if we don't feel that way, we have to present that and to take action, positive, constructive action in the face of challenges.
Ugh, I love everything you just said. And yes, yes, couldn't ditto that more. All right. Give me, give our audience 5 takeaways that you want them to walk away with. 5 things to remember.
Okay. So, number one, puberty today starts earlier, lasts longer, and happens with a device in hand. That means treat kids the age they are, not the age they appear to be. And as we just said, make sure you are up to date on tech and apps and platforms that kids are using so that you can be a really helpful guide and partner for your kids. Number two, listen more than you talk. It's so tempting when we're stressed or we're worried or we're anxious or we're excited to just talk and talk and talk and talk. But the goal is actually to get the kids talking and for us to listen. And sometimes that means we have to leave a little quiet space. Sometimes we have to sit in silence, which is not hard for some of us, which is not easy for some of
Not
us.
easy.
But it's great. And I promise it gets easier with practice. Um, Remember, it's not about you. It's about your kid. It's not about your experience of the conversation. It's about your kid's experience. So you might not have found it personally or emotionally satisfying. Doesn't matter. If you got your message across, if you got a piece of information that you wanted them to know across to them, great. That's what matters. Number 4. Take the do-over when you mess up because you will mess up. This is such a complicated stage of parenting. You will mess up all the time, and taking the do-over does 2 things. One, it acknowledges to your kid, hey, I didn't do that the way I wanted. Can I have another chance? And 2, it models for them that they can mess up and take a do-over, which is really important because, God, are they going to screw up during these years? And the last one, rounding out back to the first one, is a kid may look older, but they are developmentally and in terms of brain maturation, the chronological age that they are. They need the support and care and love of the age they are, not the age they appear to be.
Vanessa Kroll Bennett, you are incredible. Thank you so
Oh,
much. I'm
thank
so glad
you.
people like you are doing this work. You're amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. And likewise, a total honor and privilege to be with you.
Thanks for listening to Hey Kiddo. If you like what you hear, give us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Learn more about Hey Kiddo at our website, hey-kiddo.com. Have a question for our experts? Email us at hello@hey-kiddo.com.